if you could say goodbye to your bad habits and embrace new and healthy habits once and for all? Sound impossible? Well, according to our next guest, it's not. Author Gretchen Rubin has been called the queen of the self-help memoir, but prefers to call her work self-helpful instead. Her book, The Happiness Project, spent more than 2 years, that's 2, on the New York Times bestseller list and has been translated into more than 30 languages. When she's not cranking out hit books, she's hosting a happiness-focused podcast or working on her popular daily blog. In her latest book, Better Than Before, Mastering the Habits of Our Everyday Lives, Gretchen Rubin shares strategies for developing habits that enrich our lives and make our goals a reality. She joins me now to share her research on the power of habits in our lives. Gretchen, welcome to Full Frame.
I'm very happy to be talking to you.
Well, good. I want you to stay happy. Yeah. Do you feel an enormous pressure on you to always be happy since you're the happy person?
No, actually I don't. It seems like I might, but I don't.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, this self-help. You're not into that. You say you're a moral essayist.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, my big subject is human nature. What are we like? Why do we do what we do? If we want to do something different, how do we do it? And so I think self-help sometimes makes people think of like simple answers, kind of saccharine advice, one-size-fits-all solutions. And really, I want to take a much bigger view to say, well, what are people like? What am I like? How can we understand ourselves and other people better? And so that we can direct our lives in happier, healthier, and more productive ways. So
was it an easy linkage to go from happiness to habits?
It was very easy because, I'd been talking to people for years and researching and thinking about happiness. And I began to notice a pattern, which was when people talked about a big happiness boost they'd had, or even more often, a big happiness challenge that they were facing, very often it had to do with something that at its core was a problem with a habit. So somebody would say something like, well, my problem is that I'm exhausted all the time. Well, that's really about the habit of getting enough sleep. And I began to see how being able to be in control of our habits was such a powerful tool in helping people to be happier.
You say it's architecture.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, habits, research suggests, are about 40% of our everyday life. So they're like the invisible architecture of our days. If our habits work for us, we're just much more likely to be happier, healthier, and more productive. And if our habits don't work for us, that's really going to be a challenge because they do shape so much of our daily routine.
I want to get to the different style of people in a moment, but there's some people who write about habits and they talk about cues and rewards. That you don't work out, so put the tennis shoes right there towards your bed.
Right.
You get out, okay, they're there, they're staring at me, I'll do it, and then the reward is I have a smoothie afterwards. I do this thing, and I don't know if it's trickery or whatever. I hate working out, so a lot of times I'll go to work and I won't shave, but I know I have to go down to the gym to shave, and if I go down there, I'll work out. Are these just kind of gimmicks that we do with ourselves, and what do you say to people who do that?
No, well, in my framework, so I came up with 21 strategies, or identified 21 strategies that people use to make or break habit, and yours is one of pairing. The strategy of pairing is when two things go together. It's not that one's a reward for the other, it's just that if you want to do one, you have to do the other. So in your mind, it's like, if I want to shave, I have to go to the gym at work, and if I'm going to go to the gym at work, I'm probably going to work out. And so it's just that if you want to shave, which presumably you do, you've got to work out. And so that's just a pairing. And a lot of times people use pairing with great success because they'll use it to watch sort of bad TV, trashy TV. They'll think, well, the only time I can watch this is when I'm at the gym. When I'm on the treadmill, I get to watch this. It's not that it's a reward, it's just that these two things only happen at the same time. And so because you want to watch that trashy TV, you have that reason to go to the gym.
And for me, it's forced. I can't go on the air with stubble, so
it's a really great suggestion. It's
well,
a really
good.
Great strategy.
I'm glad I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Which one's harder, getting rid of a bad habit or employing a good habit? Or are they the same?
I think they're the same because often they're really two sides of the same coin. So maybe you want to quit sugar or you want to eat healthier. So, one is breaking a habit, one is making a habit. And with the 21 strategies that I identify, you use the same strategies whether you're making or breaking a habit. So I think it's less important to figure out how you frame that habit than how you're gonna tackle it. Like what strategy you're going to use to master it. And often what I found is that when there's a challenging habit that people want to change, they might have to use 4 or 5 strategies all simultaneously to cement that habit into place, which is a lot harder than it sounds. Which is a lot easier than it sounds.
Let me talk about these tendencies,
Yes.
and maybe we can rattle through them. Let's start with upholders. Talk to us about upholders. What are they?
So this has to do with how people meet expectations, outer expectations and inner expectations. Outer expectations are something like a work deadline. Inner expectations are something like your own desire to keep a New Year's resolution. So upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations alike. So they meet a work deadline, they keep a New Year's resolution without much trouble.
And then we move on from upholders to obligers.
So obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet their own inner expectations. So like a friend of mine who said, well, when I was in high school, I was on the track team. I never missed track practice, but I can't go running now. When she had a team and a coach, she had no trouble meeting that expectation, but she can't, when it's just her own desire to go running, she has a lot of trouble doing it.
Fascinating. And then there are rebels.
Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do when they want to do it in their own way. So they want to act from choice and freedom. They don't do it because they're supposed to.
And we'll talk a little bit more about rebels and motivating them, because you had some very interesting takes on that. And then the other is questioners.
So questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. They hate anything arbitrary or irrational. So in a way, they make everything an inner expectation, because they'll meet it if they endorse it. But if they don't buy into it, then they won't keep that expectation. And
I know you speak a lot. Do you find that businesses want to have their managers read this book? Because if you have a rebel working for you, you make the point that you might motivate them by saying, I know you can't get this report done by Friday.
Right. No, it has a lot of implications for managing, for hiring, for teams, like managing conflict. And somebody came up to me afterward and said, I only want to hire obligers. Now I'm going to hire 4 obligers. That's what I want. I want somebody who's going to meet my expectations and let their own expectations for themselves go. So they were seeing it in terms of like, well, what kind of people do I want for my industry? So there are a lot of implications. And then some tasks are better suited temperamentally to the different tendencies. So, if you're an upholder, the idea of sticking to the rules is very exciting to you. You want to know what the expectations are, and you want to meet them. Well, you can imagine that for some careers that would be very helpful. For other careers, it might be actually detrimental.
What tendency are you?
I'm an upholder. And a lot of things became clearer to me when I realized that I was an upholder, because it turns out that upholder is a very tiny tendency. Not that very few people are rebels, and very few people are upholders. And I always thought, like, why is everybody having trouble? Like, they just need to make up their minds that something's important to them, and then they'll exercise or they'll write every day or what. I didn't understand that people had a tougher time with it than I did, and understanding how I was sort of this extreme personality was one of the big revelations that I had when I was writing the book.
So what am I?
Well, how do you
Not
feel,
enough time.
How do you feel about New Year's resolutions?
I always make one and I always break it. So that says something, doesn't it? I usually can make it through much of January, though.
Yeah, I'm suspecting that you might be an obliger.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you feel that it's more important to meet your commitments to others than your commitments to yourself?
I suppose so. I kind of see myself sort of as a rebel, though. I know that in this show, we have strict structures. The interview's only supposed to go so long, but a lot of times I go over and they can deal with that.
They can deal with that.
What do you think? Is that rebel tendency or no?
Yeah, or it might just be realistic. But
or you may be that good in an interview.
Do you feel that people, do people often, what happens if somebody asks you to do something? What would your reaction be?
I'm a procrastinator. So I don't know.
You'd procrastinate.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't just reject it.
No.
Okay. I think you're an obliger. But that's the biggest tendency. That's the biggest tendency. Of all the 4 tendencies, that's the one that has the most people in it.
See, there
so statistically, that's likely to.
What do you think in terms of what you've seen? If I'm a boss and I start to look at the landscape, who's going to be the most difficult person for me to deal with? If I'm in a meeting, I've got the questioner who's going to question everything that I do, but then you got the rebels who don't want to do anything. Who are going to be the real trouble spots, and how do you manage that?
But that's an excellent point, because really all of these tendencies have upsides and downsides, and include people who are big successes and also big losers. And a lot of it for managing ourselves and managing other people is to understand, well, how to get the benefit of that person's tendency and offset the limitations. So you mentioned questioners. Well, questioners can be enormously healthy for organizations, because they're like, why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing doing it at all? Should we be doing it? Is there a better, more efficient way? So that's helpful, but sometimes it can spiral out of control and they can't stop their questioning and it becomes tiresome to other people. Or they say they get analysis paralysis where they can't make a decision because they want perfect information, but life doesn't always give us perfect information. Rebels can be great. They can think outside the box. They don't care if something's going to annoy somebody or, but then that can be difficult too. So it's really about, I think once you understand the tendencies, then you can sort of see how to counterbalance the negatives that come along with that tendency so that everybody can get where they're trying to go and get the benefit of the different strengths of the tendencies without bringing along with them the disadvantages, because they all do have disadvantages.
Is there a difference between habits and addictions? Because a lot of people would say, I've got this bad habit of smoking, but a lot of people would say, well, it's addiction. You can't, it's difficult to change that. Do you see a distinction there, or can you use these same tools to perhaps alleviate your addiction to sugar or caffeine? Or
well, the word addiction is very controversial. I mean, because it's sort of like, when does something become an addiction? And some people argue that there is no true addiction the way we think of it now. It's sort of a new idea, and it's controversial itself. So I don't think there is a hard line between those two things, but I do think that for all of us, there comes a point with some habits where we think, this habit is not helping me. This habit is not making my life richer and bigger. It's making my life smaller, and it's making me feel guilt, regret, anger. It's not working for me. So, are you addicted to sugar? Are you in the habit of eating sugar? I think it's not so important to identify like the exact proper terminology, but just that I would be happier if I mastered. If I got control of this area of my life, how can I use my habits to make me feel like I'm more in control of how I want my life to look?
I love the control of my life, because I remember interviewing a recovered heroin addict years ago, and she told me the story, and it stayed with me, that her mother paid for her to go through the program to get off heroin, and it didn't stick. And then her boyfriend, and she'd gone through several boyfriends, same thing. And her daughter pleaded with her, you've got to go through rehab. You got to do it for me. And she said it was only when she went through it for herself that it stuck. That all these other ones were failed because it was somebody else saying, you've got to do this. You really have to find the internal fortitude to do it if it's going to stick, right?
I think you need to figure out what is true about you. Now, I would say that for some people, they might want the internal fortitude to exercise on their own, but they're going to do much better if they have a trainer. They need that kind of external accountability. But you're exactly right. They need to make that decision themselves. Like, this is what I want, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do, given my nature, to bring about the circumstances that are going to allow me to succeed. Yeah, and I talk about red herring habits, when somebody's like, yeah, I should totally exercise. I'm really going to start exercising. And you can just hear it in their voice. They're talking that way because they don't want to get into a fight, or they know they should, but they really have no intention of doing it. Well, that person's not going to have good success changing a habit because they don't really want to. You're exactly right.
Well, one final question before we go. As you go out and speak, is there one habit, bad habit, that people come up and talk to you about more than any other? I mean, that really resonates? And then, and how they talk to you, as you just pointed out, some of them you can probably, it doesn't matter what I'm going to say. You're, as you said, the red herring thing.
Yeah.
But is there one that really resonates?
The ones that come up over and over again is, first, getting control of eating. Like, people feel like they want to eat more healthfully and they don't know how. The other one is being, is technology, screen time, cell phones, feeling like, either feeling like it's using up all your time, and so you're sort of losing your life to, binge watching television, or feeling like you're never really at leisure. Like I'm even when I'm not at work, I'm kind of at work because I'm always checking my work email. And so I think figuring out how to make technology a servant and not a master, and how to get like a feeling of being in control of eating. Those are the two that people most often mention specifically. Okay,
you got this H thing going. You got happiness, habits.
Yeah, I know.
Next book about hymns or hobbits, or what do we get next from you?
I've got to figure that out. Yeah. I think my next book is going to be sort of a field guide to the 4 tendencies, because there is so much interest as I'm talking to people in having a much greater level of detail than I could get into in this book, where it was just one of 21 strategies. So, but that's not my next big book, but I think I'll do something like that just because people keep asking for it.
What's the next big book?
I don't know. That's what I need to figure out.
Oh.
I always have a light bulb moment where it comes to me, so I just gotta wait for that light bulb to go off.
Gretchen, thanks so much. It's been great fun.
Oh, thank you.
Coming up next, this week's full-frame close-up on the written word as art.